Well, hello everybody, it is Dr. Drake 63 here again today. Thanks for joining me for part 2 of our series of the modernized AK-74 versus the modernized M4 platform. And again, to reintroduce our players, up top here you have the SLR 104FR made by Arsenal, Bulgarian. This is chambered in 5.45 by 39. And our M4 representative is the Bravo Company BCM 14 Recce, however you want to call it. I'm sure one of these days somebody's going to say, hey, dumbass, this is what this thing really is. But today we're just going to briefly go over the operating systems of these two firearms in today's installment and how they're different and my thoughts and preferences for each. Both of these firearms are gas piston operated. Now, people are going to say that the M4 or the AR model is, in fact, a direct impingement, but we're going to show you why our good friend Ian McCullum from Forgotten Weapons correctly identifies this as a piston-driven weapon as well and not a true direct impingement. But be that as it may, it's widely known as a direct impingement device, and so I don't have a problem doing that, but just to let you guys know there is a difference. So let's get down to it. Okay, so first of all, as always, we make sure that we're dealing with a clear chamber, and you can see that this firearm is clear. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the operating system on this AK. Like the AR and like most semi-automatic weapons you're going to see in the world, they're based on the principle that as gas travels down the barrel, a portion of them are trapped through a hole in the barrel and then through this piece right here, which is called a gas block, directed back along the length of the barrel for the purposes of driving back your bolt and rechambering another one. So the whole name of the game here is you need to have a spring. You need to have some kind of a resistance, which is going to give you a counter to that gas, which is driving back your bolt, extracting the prior bolt or extracting the prior cartridge and reloading the next one. So it's a real simple concept. Okay. Looking at this AK, how is that done? Well, again, as we know, this thing's about as easy as you can get to take down. Here's your spring right here, okay? And we'll show you how that differs quite a bit from the AR in a minute. But your spring is holding this particular piece, which is a piston head, which is your bolt carrier, and which is your actual bolt, as you can see right here. So what you have here in your bolt is you have basically a bolt head. It's got an extractor right there, which grabs the rim of the cartridge, and as it's driven back, it pulls it out. Now, the way this is set up, if you look right here, you'll see the way this is set up. If you look right here, you're going to see this what's called a cam channel. So that's meant so that as the bolt goes back and forth, it actually will rotate. So it comes up, this extractor claw grabs the rim of the bolt, and it rotates. And that's what strips your prior cartridge. You push this forward, and the firing pin comes into contact with the next cartridge. So you see this whole mechanism here is about 13, 14 inches long. It's very simplistic in its design, but that's your operating principle. Now, you'll notice also that you have this portion right here, which is your gas tube, which is something that you don't have looking like that on an AR. And basically, here it is. It's about 5/8 inch or so, close to 3/4, I guess, in diameter. And your gases leave this block. They push on this piston head and they drive your bolt assembly back. And that's your operating principle of this firearm. Now, when we compare this to the AR in a minute, you'll see it does the same thing. It rotates a bolt head and so forth and so on, but it's just built in a different fashion. Advantages to this setup, it's large, it's easy to clean, it's easy to replace, and because it's large, you tend to have a lot of overgassing in ARs. In other words, they're slamming this bolt group back pretty hard, and so things can be done such as replacing the springs with a stiffer spring. In the case of the 5.45 by 39, you don't need that as much, but you do see that in some of the 7.62 by 39 versions, which, again, in my opinion, for the most part, are kind of obsolete. But that's just me saying that. So outside of that, that's your operating principle. Okay. A couple other things to note here. This is a very large gas block. And also you have a front sight which is mounted to the barrel. And because of that, as heat and things build up, that front sight, which like a lot of ARs or M16s that have the front sight gas block as well, as that heats up, you're going to lose some accuracy because of the expansion of the metal. There's just no getting around that, okay? But you see this gas block here, it creates a pretty strong linkage to this operating system and makes it kind of hard to do something like free float an AK barrel. Makes it really hard to do that, as a matter of fact. So that's one reason why that you have higher degree accuracy with an AR than you do to an AK typically. That's one of the reasons. Another one of the big reasons would be the ammunition, which more so of a 7.62 by 39 versus 223. It's not a good comparison. The 223 is going to win that every time. Okay, so basically this is your operating system. I suggest you go over to Larry Vickers or Vickers channel, and you'll see, if you look up, you'll see where there's a slow motion showing how this operating principle of the AK is. But basically what happens is that bolt does not slide back and forth perfectly linearly. In other words, you get some side to side, which tends to degrade from your accuracy. But again, advantage to this kind of system is it tends to be less finicky. It tends to be able to handle a lot more dirt. And because of that, I think AKs have a lot of their reliability they owe to their gas system. But that's your operating system on an AK. You've got your trigger group down in here. I'm not going to get too much into triggers or anything like that. I just wanted to give you some basics. Okay, moving along to the M4 platform. Here we have this BCM. Just like with the AR, we're going to make sure that this is clear, and it is, and go through the takedown procedure. I don't want to be redundant. Most of you guys know how to do this. Basically, you're taking these two takedown bolts and you're separating your lower from your upper. Now, here I've got mine connected with this sling, which isn't too bright, but we'll go ahead and take care of that. But basically, let's talk about what we talked about before in the other. Okay, first of all, your gas tube is inside, and it travels inside right here. Let's get... And if you hold this upside down, you see these two screws. That is your gas block. Now, it is a micro gas block. Okay. And from that, you see there is a very small tube, a gas tube. Oh, it's about 1/8 of an inch in diameter, and it runs all the way back See it through the top of these holes, all the way back to your chamber, okay? So it's a much smaller gas tube. It's a much smaller gas block, but because of the way this is set up, this handguard can be attached only here at the receiver and not be in contact with the barrel all the way through the end. It's what's called a floated handguard, which means you're going to have more accuracy. And as this firearm's barrel heats up, it's not going to be influenced by all the things that are attached to it like you have with the AK or an older M4 type platform. So thought we'd point that out to you. Now, I was talking about this floated handguard. Obviously, this one is called a key mod. So on top, you have a 1913 or what some folks call a Picatinny or Weaver style rail. Then on the sides, you have these, what some people say looks like construction shelving type of. One of the things that you'll notice is that you have the ability to attach things all the way up and down this rail. Now, you can put rails on your AK. They're not truly floated barrels that I'm aware of. The M4, the AR platform lends itself so much more for modularization. That's just the way things go. And you can obviously get a real slim profile here because you're not dealing with so much of a gas tube mechanism. So that does give you an opportunity to free some things up. But anyway, we talked earlier about the concept of this not really being direct impingement, because direct impingement is going to enter the chamber and push your whole mechanism back. That doesn't happen. What this gas key really is a piston, and it seats right at the front of that receiver up against that small tube we showed you a minute ago, and it is driven back just like the AR receiver, and just like, the AK receiver, and just like the AK receiver, you have a cammed channel right here that as the bolt travels back and forth, it rotates. And what does it do? It's got an extraction claw that grabs the round, strips it away, and as it moves forward, your firing pin, which is located right here, is going to shoot off the next round. So basically, it does all the same things, but it does it in a more compact and smaller space. You've got, instead of a side charging handle that you had with the AK, here with the AR, you have a charging handle that's on top. But it does the same thing. It pulls your bolt back. It loads the next round into the chamber, and away you go. So very similar. The reason that the AK has a reputation of being able to handle a lot more mud, dirt, grime, elements, things like that, is because its gas system and its receiver chamber are all bigger. Okay. This is a much more finite space. Because of that, you have a lot more of a precise travel of your bolt back and forth, which is why, especially in select fire or full auto, the M4 platform is a lot more accurate than the AK platform. But it does tend to be a little bit pickier. Now, modernized ARs tend to have a little bit tighter tolerances between the upper and the lower in places where dirt can get in. And a lot of the things you heard that were issues in Vietnam, such as a lot of jamming and so forth, that were caused by things like improper ammo, that were caused by things like ridiculous notions that you didn't have to clean the firearm, all of these kind of things. Not the case. Not the case at all. You do need to clean these. Probably need to clean these a little bit more often than you need to clean an AK. But for the most part, especially in a select fire or full auto configuration, these are going to be more accurate than your AK. They just are, laws of physics dictate that. Okay, between floated barrels and the other thing too is you look at the length between your rear sight and your front sight on an M4 versus an AK derivative, and it's night and day. Now, you can put sights further back on the rail, the dust cover of an AK. In fact, I have a Galil that does just that. The other thing we talked about with the AK is we showed that that large spring that is on top of the chamber. And here with the AR, the spring action is done through the buffer tube. So you've got a spring that's back in your shoulder stock of the AR platform. But again, it does almost precisely the same thing. It's just, where do you want your spring? So because of the way the AR is set up, it's typically possible to make that a lighter weight rifle. Now, they aren't always lighter weight when people put 1,700 pounds of shit on them. But the point is, your basic configuration rifle tends to have the ability to be a little bit lighter because you've got your buffer spring in the back. You're able to do things like put a free float handguard on there and so forth and so on. And like I said, there's a lot of modernized versions of the AK where you are seeing quad rails, things like that. But guys, it's not the same thing. In my opinion, it's too much of an afterthought in terms of the AK. And as long as you've got that big gas block, and as long as you've got that big long piston and heavy charging handle / bolt carrier combination, you're going to be kind of limited into how you can accessorize it versus an AR. And there's no getting away from that. I don't believe that that's something that's up for debate, but I suspect that I'm going to hear differently. Okay, guys, so that's kind of a brief and probably somewhat crude overview of the differences in operating systems between the M4 modernized platform or the modernized AK, quote-unquote AK-74, from an operating standpoint. Next, we're going to get into accuracy. And rather than do that as a part 3, that's going to be included in part 2 here. And we're going to show you some range results on a rainy day from 100 yards. And we're going to talk about that next. So you can't always pick your weekend weather, I guess, unless you live someplace like Arizona or something. But we're getting some windy stuff today. A little bit of chop on the lakes, going to have some rain. The other option was simply going to be, I can go tomorrow where it's supposed to be sunny and twice as windy. So maybe not the best ideal conditions from which to comparison shoot a couple of rifles that shoot relatively lightweight projectiles, but it's what we have. So we're going to start out with the AK-74 copy, the Arsenal SLR 104. Today we're shooting pretty common stuff, Wolf 60 grain, 5.45 by 39. It's steel cased ammo, which is pretty much what these rifles were developed to shoot. It's the most common stuff you can get, stuff like Wolf. You can get Red Army Standard. It's Ukrainian-made ammunition. It is possible to get some better ammo. Hornady makes a version of the 5.45-39 that I have shot. It's a little bit more accurate, but what I wanted to do was be reasonable and shoot the kind of ammo that I'm going to go out and buy to shoot at the range. In other words, range ammo. So at 100 yards and using the sandbags for support, we decided to hell with the weather. We're going to give it our best shot anyway. The wind wasn't blowing too bad at this particular point, and we're shooting open sights at 100 yards. Just a general comment, I'm not a real big fan of the thickness of the front sight on this particular rifle. Makes it kind of hard to hit the same point again and again at longer distances. So this is what we're dealing with now. We're shooting the BCM. We have turned off the red dot, I promise, so we're just shooting open sights and shooting through some rain. 100 yards and sloppy. I think I haven't mentioned that I wasn't a big fan of the thickness of the front sight on the Arsenal SLR 104, and when I said I'm not a fan of it, it's too thick. So it's really hard to keep something as wide as that is on the same spot over and over again. Not the case with these Daniel Defense sights on the BCM here. A lot crisper and a lot more focused front sight picture for me. So I have to say that I like that. Here we're using 62 grain range ammo, so it's pretty much the comparable type of round that you're going to see me using with the AK. It's not expensive stuff. It's not target ammo. Rain coming down. Are these ideal conditions to do this kind of comparison? I don't know, but the fact of the matter is these are military rifles and they're designed to be used in all sorts of weather conditions. So maybe this is as good a test as any in comparing how easy these rifles are to shoot open sight one versus the other. This is a quick look at the M4, and as you can see, not a super great group. I'm definitely capable of a lot better, but obviously tough conditions today. Comparing that to the AKM, what you're seeing is where I have some elevation variance for the most part with the one. With the AKM, it's more of an issue of a windage variance. So kind of interesting. Like I said, same conditions. And again, looking at the left at the M4, you're seeing something that's going to be a lot more workable for farther distances. This is still going to be lethal hits going out to 200 meters, even 300 meters, where with that AK and having some difficulties with the front sight, not so much. So, what conclusions do we draw from that? It's kind of hard to say, but just looking at the two, you can see that I did shoot better with the M4 today. But overall, both of them could have been better, and would like to actually see how they do with some optics for a better evaluation. I just have to be honest and say I believe out of the two platforms that you are going to see more accuracy out of an M4 type of scenario than you are out of an AK. I think the reasons for that are numerous. I think that that's not a knock against the AK. I think, as I stated earlier in the prior video, that the AK-74 type of derivative versus the AK-47 is a much more accurate firearm, mostly because of the round. I think the round is inherently more accurate and flatter shooting. Certainly is at distance than the 7.62 by 39. I think the M4 is just a more of a precision build type of weapon, and that's why you see better accuracy with it generally. I think another thing, big thing to consider too, is that there's so many ammo choices and well-made ammo choices for 223/5.56 by 45 rounds, whereas you're pretty limited when you're talking about 5.45 by 39. Almost all of it's Ukrainian-made steel case ammunition. It's meant for shooting a whole lot of it, and accuracy is not as much the name of the game as getting a whole ton of lead downrange fast. And AKs are known for being really good at that and being highly dependable. So as we said at the beginning, this wasn't going to be a torture test video. If we were to do torture tests, especially with free float rails and some of the configurations you see with AR/M4 type derivatives, I think you're going to find that the AK is a more durable firearm. But I think in terms of accuracy, especially at distance, given the ammo choices and given the configurations, you're going to see that an AR is a more accurate firearm. So that's kind of my 2 cents worth on this. I'm not one to say one's better than the other. I'd say this: if you happen to find yourself in Russia and you need a semi-auto rifle with parts and ammo availability, the best bet is to pick yourself up an AK-74. If you happen to be in the United States and you're in need of a semi-automatic type of firearm, or full automatic, I guess, select fire, then pick up yourself an M4 derivative, because you'll have parts and ammunition availability there. So that's kind of where we go with this. We're not declaring a real winner. I will say that the M4 is more accurate. I like both these rifles. I go back and forth. I'm not ready to say that my Bravo company has replaced my Arsenal as my new favorite rifle. I will tell you though, after watching this video, if you've made it through the whole thing, you can kind of see what my thinking is, and would welcome your opinion. Love to know what you think. So this is Dr. Drake 63 saying thanks for watching. It's got a definite nerd factor to it, lots and lots of breakdown, lots of discussion on parts, you name it, and I hope you've enjoyed it. And as always, guys, remember, support the NRA. Thanks and have a great day.